Hello, everyone, and welcome to our last pre-lab of our first unit. This one's going to have some, slight differences, some little nuances to it that we haven't seen in our first couple of labs. And as you can see on the screen, what we're going to be talking about this time are triangles. And in particular, we're going to be investigating the area of a triangle. And by the end, we'll come up with a math model for that. So, as you probably know, and again, please forget if you think you know the math model for this, because we're going to discover it by way of nature here, right? Don't use it to do any of the work in this lab, right? Make measurements. But as you know, the area of a triangle is based on two things. The base of the triangle, which in our triangle here would be here, right? That's basically the bottom of the triangle. And the height of the triangle, which in my diagram would be right there, right? How tall it is. Traditional symbols, capital A for area, lowercase b for base, and a lowercase h, or you could use a capital H for height. Right? But these are the typical symbols that you're going to see, so we will use them as well. So, in this lab, we are going to create graphical and mathematical representations of the relationship between the area, the base, and the height of a triangle. And right away, you might notice our first difference between this and our other two labs. This is a lab that has 3 variables, right? Not just 2. This won't happen all the time, but on occasion, we need more than, our variables depend on more than one other thing. Right? So we need a multivariable lab. We'll even do a lab eventually that'll have 4 variables in it. Right? But in this unit, 3 is the most we're going to go with. So let's talk about which variables we can control and which ones we will have to just, measure. So hopefully it's fairly obvious that we could control the base of the triangle that we were looking at. That would make base an independent variable, I for independent. And we could also control the height of the triangle, so that would make that also independent. And then we will measure the resulting dependent variable in a very similar way that we did with the area of a circle lab. So this means we have 2 independent variables that we can control, base and height. Well, think about what you've learned about labs over the years. How many variables should you change at a time? That's right. You should only change 1 variable at a time. If you change them both, then how will you know which one affected the area and how it affected it? Right? So you got to change 1 variable at a time. And therefore, what should you do with the other variable? Well, if you're not going to change it, that means you should just keep it constant the whole time. Right? That means, since we have 2 independent variables, we are actually going to have to do 2 labs. And I will show you in the post lab how we can take those 2 results and smush them up together by doing some math into one eventual math model. Okay? This is a process. That's what makes this one unique compared to the other 2 labs that we've done. So, 2 parts to this lab, as you will see on your lab sheet. Part 1, we are going to see the relationship between area and base while keeping the height constant. So we're going to change the bases, but they'll all have the same height, and we're going to measure the area. How are we going to do that? Well, like I said, basically the same way we did in the circle lab. You're going to get a sheet of paper. Each one of these squares is 1 centimeter on a side, so they're 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter. If you notice here, all of these triangles have the exact same height, and I tried to make them nice heights, right? Easy to measure. But they differ by base. Again, I tried to make the bases nice to measure. This one's a little easier actually to do than the circle lab. But when you're measuring the area, you are still going to get some decimal fractional triangles that you're going to have to use. Right? You're only going to get partial squares, So make sure that you are estimating as much as possible. Now, if you're a bit crafty here, you might be able to see a way to do this. right, to make your life even easier and to make your estimations even better. But I'm not going to tell you what that is. Okay? Remember, Do not calculate anything. Right? Do not calculate. Do not use the equation you think you know from math class. Right? We are measuring this and discovering it in nature. So the second part of the lab will be area versus height with constant base. Very similar way, you'll get actually the back side of the paper, right? And if you notice, these all have the same base. Again, nice bases, right? But they vary by height. Again, you're going to have to do quite a bit of estimation on these 1 centimeter square squares, right? When you're getting along the edges, but if you're careful, you can figure out a way to do that to get you really precise numbers. So 2 parts to the lab. Each part you're going to make some graphs, and then as we get done with that in the post lab, I will show you how we will put the 2 parts together into one math model.